Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Leon County Today with Sheriff Walt McNeil. I'm Sean Denide, and Sheriff, this I think is definitely going to be an interesting show for viewers out there. We just completed a report that was published called The Anatomy of a Homicide. This was your idea, your vision. I've never seen a report like this, and it was so interesting to read through it. Why did you decide to commission this?
Well, first of all, Sara Bardot needs all the credit for the great work she did. I'd been talking about we really need to drill down into the shootings that are occurring in our community and really analyze what's taking place. What are the commonalities with respect to the shooters and the victims and neighborhoods and all of that? Now, we've always thought that anecdotally we kind of know what we, but this kind of validates what we thought the issues and problems were, and to some extent it gave us a different perspective on some of the crime and why it's occurring and who's involved, and so it's something we absolutely need. It's not any guesswork anymore in terms of what's taking place in our community, who's being impacted by it. And now the big thing now is how do we utilize this information? How do we go forward? And the fact is that we were really fortunate to have Sara Bardot, but we were also very fortunate to have the Florida Sheriff's Association and bring their expertise to the table and sit down with us and work through some of those dynamics. A lot of work, a lot of data that had to be mined, as they say, dig into it and see exactly what it says. But I think now we can start saying to the citizens, we've got an idea of what this is all about. Quite honestly, Shonda, the initiative we started called All In is, I think, going to be front and center with respect to these issues. We know that law enforcement is not the answer to this problem. It's going to take all of us, again, working together to deal with these. And much of the things that we talked about with the Children's Services Council, we found to be true in the research that was done about the murders taking place in our community. That is, kids who aren't able to read, the third grade reading level has come full circle with respect to this report that we've got put together. So we're hopeful that our next steps is how do we now engage our entire community? How do we get the community engaged around fighting crime and driving down the number of violent situations we're having in Tallahassee? And I'm extremely optimistic because I know Tallahassee, Leon County, the citizens here always rise to the occasion. Absolutely, and as you mentioned, this was a collaborative effort. Sara Bardot definitely drilling down on this. Florida Sheriff's Association really saying that this report is a bit groundbreaking for our state. So we're going to delve into this topic today. We're going to talk about, this report covered 5 years of homicides in our community, worked by Lcso, and looked at commonality. So we're looking forward to digging deep into this topic today. We want to make sure you all stick around for more details on the anatomy of a homicide. But first, let's check in with Sergeant McMillan with our Crime Tip Tuesday.
Hello everyone, this is Sergeant Shade McMillan with the Leon County Sheriff's Office, and here's today's Crime Tip Tuesday. With the cooler weather upon us, it is a good time to get out in the yard and make sure your landscaping also deters thieves. Here are some tips for target hardening your home through landscaping. Plant short, thorny bushes, shrubs, or cacti under all windows. Keep all trees and shrubs trimmed. Shrubs should be below 3 feet tall, and tree branches should be at least 6 feet from the ground. Avoid planting a tree line near the street. They make great hiding places. Use gravel under windows, walkways, and driveways to hear footsteps. Stay safe out there.
Honey, what I think you need is a socket wrench.
I played JV basketball.
I'm sorry, I don't think it looks right.
This is good, and it's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/therightseat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
I'm gonna call my dad.
911, where's your emergency?
Everyone's on their way. What happened?
Your friend's not breathing.
Yes, please get my mom and dad. Oh my God!
Every day,
Millions of people are connecting.
And even though we're overcoming obstacles,
watching each other's backs,
and banding together.
we should still make an effort.
We should still make an effort
to get to know each other.
On a deeper level.
Father.
Cosplayer.
Mentor.
Actor.
It's time we take a step forward.
It's time we take a step forward. Come together
and discover
how accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
Severe weather can strike anytime, anywhere, but there's a simple way to stay safe. Hey, Jim Cantori here. I stay safe in dangerous weather by planning ahead. You can stay safe too with a few easy steps. Build an inexpensive kit with supplies for your family's needs. Write down important information like phone numbers and medications. Always talk with your family and remember any pets in your planning. Be ready, be safe. Start your plan today at ready.gov/plan.
Joining me now is Lcso Planning and Research Coordinator, Sara Bardot. Sara, we recently released a first-of-its-kind report for our agency called The Anatomy of a Homicide. Talk to us about what went into that and what can the citizens expect from that report.
Thank you, Sheriff. It's a privilege to be here with you today to speak on behalf of the team about this important effort. I joined the agency in March, and this was already an ongoing effort there. Chief Summers got me up to speed relatively quickly, and in April we formed a project team collaboratively with the Florida Sheriff's Association, several different individuals from the agency, and we began looking at first the Leon County Sheriff's Office investigative reports. Soon we realized that that's a small piece of that big pie. A lot of the homicides occur within the city, and so we expanded that out to look at all the homicides that occurred within Tallahassee and Leon County from that 2015 to 2020 period. As you stated, we were looking for any commonalities in the people, the situations, the conditions that had a play in what caused these homicides, taking that deeper dive. Preventing violent crime is a top priority for Leon County Sheriff's Department.
Absolutely.
In order to prevent crime, we must first understand it.
Right.
So this was kind of our first step in trying to look a little bit deeper into these. And in addition, we wanted to research a lot of evidence-based practices to find out which of those may fit for Leon County.
Sara, I want to tell you, thank you. First of all, this report was as thorough as you can get. You did a fantastic job of putting this all together. What were some of the resources that you used to conduct this, to put this report together?
Sure. So first, I'd like to acknowledge the project team. As I said, we had several people from the agency that participated. Our Crime Intelligence and Analysis Unit was a big player. Our victim advocates, our reentry and inmate program section. We also had some folks from Law Enforcement Operations, and then also the Florida Sheriff's Association Research Institute. As far as the sources go, we began with looking at the Uniform Crime Reports, supplemental homicide reports. TPD shared with us summary data they had on homicides from 2017 to 2020. We used the Law Enforcement Information Exchange, or LINKS, the Judicial Information System, JIS. We also spoke with the State Attorney's Office, and they helped us out a little bit with some motives. And then we had a very unique source, the Corrections Integrative Needs Assessment System, or CNIS-LITE. That's something relatively new to the agency, and that was kind of our way that we provided input from the offenders themselves.
I mean, a lot of work went into that, obviously using a lot of technology. What were some of the major findings in the report itself?
So the available data suggests that the homicide problem in Leon County is not unique. A lot of areas are obviously dealing with the same violence issues, and the findings validated what we already knew. The first major finding is the homicides predominantly occur in disadvantaged communities. For us, that was the 32304 zip code. That was the zip code that had the highest number of homicides, also had a high number of offenders and victims that resided within that zip code at the time of the homicide. The next significant finding is both the victims and the offenders were overwhelmingly young black males. On the age side, the 15 to 24 age group had the highest for both victims and offenders. 75% of the victims and at least 69% of the offenders were black. I say at least because 14% the race and sex was unknown. And then as far as the sex, 86% of the victims and 81% of the offenders were male.
Okay, wow.
Yep. Additionally, the majority of the homicide offenders had previous criminal charges. Most of them had entered the system as juveniles. There were only a few of them that had had their first arrest after age 18. So most of these folks were individuals that had entered the system at a young age. Also, the majority of the homicides were committed with firearm, 76% of them. And there is a discussions section within the report that compares the Leon County data to other available published data, looking at some CDC data, FBI data, FDLE data. And like I said, there was not a whole lot that was off base compared to what we're seeing in other areas here in Leon County.
Yeah, Sarah, hold that thought. Great, great work. Thank you for it. Coming up, more on what we discovered in the Anatomy of a Homicide report. And now that we have the research, how do we use it? Stay tuned.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
When I was 10, my mom got deported. We had a difficult time, and I feel that's why I didn't get to finish school.
Jessica has been through a lot in her life from early childhood.
My husband is really supportive in a way that he pushed me to go back to school.
She came in looking to complete her diploma. She had a family she had to take care of. Anytime she needed help, we provided her help. She realized that we were here for her.
She wants to have a career so her kids can look up to her.
My graduation, it was something I will never forget. I couldn't explain the emotion I was feeling because people like you and me sometimes may have doubts in ourselves, but I feel that everything's possible.
Jessica's future is brighter than ever.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
We're back with Lcso Planning and Research Coordinator Sara Bardot, talking about our newly released Anatomy of a Homicide report, an exploratory review of homicides committed in Leon County over the last 5 years. Sara, from your perspective, was there anything surprising or unexpected in the report?
Sure. So most of the information was as we expected. A few things that were interesting to me is there were 85% of the offenders that indicated they had been expelled or suspended from school before. I wasn't suspended that there had been, but the high percentage was a little bit surprising to me.
Say that again. What was the number?
85%.
Wow.
Yep. The other surprising factor was when asked for reasons why they had committed crimes in the past, 63% of the offenders said they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this was striking to me because there were other answer choices for them there to say, to defend myself or others, to, commit crime, to get food or things that I need, and they chose wrong place, wrong time, was an interesting finding. Some of the things that were unexpected to me were largely the offenders indicated that they had supportive and good relationships with their families, and their adverse childhood experiences, ACE scores, were lower than what I had anticipated seeing. As you know, a lot of research suggests that trauma becomes a risk factor for being a victim or a perpetrator of violent crime in particular later on in life. So those were a little bit surprising to me. And then we also found a few studies that cited the cost of a homicide. In two major studies, we found one of them cited the cost per homicide at $1.2 million, another at over $5 million. So in looking at the number of homicides we've had here in Leon County and kind of translating that into the number of millions of dollars that cost, puts it in perspective to me as far as what prevention and interventions cost compared to what it costs to, continue to see this rate of homicides that we're having here in our community.
Sara, was there any, in the report, all the information you've got, all this data you collected, are there any recommendations that are coming forth from the report?
Absolutely. So this study was intended to be a first step. in understanding these homicides a little bit better. Additional research and increased coordination with our partners is going to be required as we move forward. With that in mind, we offered recommendations in 4 broad categories. The first was fully understanding and defining the problem that we're facing. This was focused on homicides. However, the number of attempted homicides and non-fatal shootings is far greater. So we definitely would like to look a little bit deeper into that. Some of the things that you and I have talked about were the civil citation process and looking at how that's working for us. The student suspension and expulsions was, again, a significant finding. Early childhood exposure to people who have been incarcerated. And then also, mental health and stress-related issues for these youth. Secondly, we've got to develop a plan to address the problem. There's a lot of evidence-based strategies out there, so determining what's right for us in Leon County is going to be key. In order to do that, we're going to need to work with multitude of stakeholders. Homicide spans a multitude of stakeholders, from start to finish. So having a working group of people that can focus on this is going to help us be more successful. And when developing the plan, we need to consider things like identifying and engaging those people who are most at risk. The data shows us here, those are young black males, juvenile offenders, people in the 32304 zip code, and so forth. We need to be prepared to provide targeted services to those identified individuals. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, perhaps, family functional therapy, mentoring, life coaching, job training, enrichment activities. There's a lot of different strategies for that. And then focusing on those areas with the greatest amount of violence and those behaviors that are contributing to the violence.
Sarah, real quickly,
sure.
How can the persons watching this get a hold of that report?
Sure. So the report, the executive summary and the full report are both posted to Leon County Sheriff's Office website. If you go to the All In tab and then hit the Anatomy of a Homicide link, you'll be able to download both of those reports.
Sarah, I want to thank you again and your staff for the great work you did. And of course, this report was dedicated to victims of shootings in our community. I want to commend you all for coming up with that idea as well. So thank you again, great report. Coming up in our Deputy on Duty, an Lcso victim advocate shares how she connects with victims and their families during their time of need. Stay tuned.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
Honey, what I think you need is a socket wrench.
I played JV basketball.
I'm sorry. I don't think it looks right.
This is good, and it's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
I'm gonna call my dad.
We work very closely with the Violent Crimes Unit. We work with all victims of crime, of course, but specifically victims of violent crime, domestic violence, sexual violence, that kind of thing. We always like to call and try to reach out to that person as soon as possible after the incident has occurred. We want to try to make contact by phone or in person, face-to-face. And we want to offer them, first of all, just some emotional support. Let them know that they have someone who's there to help them and listen to them. But also let them know that they're a victim and they have rights, and inform them of those rights. And help them to, step-by-step, work their way through the criminal justice system. Because it really can be confusing and overwhelming at times, especially if you've never had any experiences with the criminal justice system, or especially if you've just been traumatized by a victimization of any kind. One of our main functions is to provide crisis counseling for victims who have been traumatized in the immediate aftermath of a crime. And so what we want to do is try to intervene and provide as much emotional and moral support as we can to minimize that trauma so that they can stabilize and try to move forward in a good way, just one step at a time. One of our main goals would really be to minimize the trauma that any victim would potentially further experience as a result of the crime. So we want to go in and provide that crisis intervention counseling and hopefully get them to a good mental space to where they feel prepared and stable enough to move forward. And we also want to make sure that they're in a safe place. If you don't feel safe, it's very hard to focus on any other aspect of your mental well-being or your job or your kids or anything like that. So we want to make sure that our victims are safe. That's a huge priority. We also like to link them with local resources, short-term and long-term. Either if we find out that a victim might be in need of housing or food bank assistance, anything like that, we would try to link them with local resources on that level, like the Victims Compensation Program, or we can refer to local counseling or local therapy resources, things like that. We do work side by side with the violent crimes units, and so we go out in person and we will actually go to a scene in person and arrive on scene and face-to-face with them and try to, calm them down, contact family members, whatever it is that we need to do. We like to keep the victims informed of what's going on with their investigations and basically act as a liaison between the victim and the detective so that we can kind of work together, share information as needed, and ultimately try to do the most thorough investigation that we can. We work side by side with them. We are both assigned the same cases and we work them together as a team, and the ultimate goal being providing the best victim services that we can while also doing a very thorough investigation and keeping that victim informed. And it's really a privilege to be a part of. The fact that victims let us into their lives the way they do and as much as they do is a very incredible and very fulfilling thing. It really puts a good positive spin on what we can do for the community and for victims of crime, and let people know that no matter what, they are never alone and that there's always someone here who wants to help and is ready to help. Seeing someone who's been traumatized and affected by crime in their life and being able to have the courage to come forward and speak about that is really a life-changing thing to witness and to experience. A lot of times in this line of work, you're meeting people on what potentially could be one of their worst days. And so I always try to take the perspective that we're here to help. We're here now. That person is still with us, thankfully, and so let's focus on that and let's see how we can move forward in a healthy, positive way to get their lives back on track and get them stabilized. So there have been a few times, there are certain names and faces that will never be erased from my memory, of course, and I'd like to think that I have made a positive impact, and I do hope so. I hope that's the case. I really do.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
911, where's your emergency?
Everyone's on their way. What happened?
Your friend's not safe.
Yes, please get my mom and dad. Oh my God!
Honey, what I think you need is a socket wrench.
I played JV basketball.
I'm sorry. I don't think it looks right.
This is good, and it's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
I'm gonna call my dad.
Welcome back to Leon County Today with Sheriff Alt McNeil. Sheriff, we were talking with Sara in the break and really talking more about the dedication of the Anatomy of a Homicide report to the victims in our community. She's talked about them not just being a number and really all of this, we look at this data, but there are people attached to that.
That's absolutely true. I mean, every life that's taken, there are families that are impacted, so it just impacts the community in ways that we never quite imagined. And that's what we really got to get a handle on this. And I think this report is going to go a long way towards making it happen. Thanks Sara and her staff, but we've got a lot of work to do.
Yes,
we in this community
indeed.
have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, and talking about those victims, our Deputy on Duty segment featuring one of our victim advocates, and I don't think the average person thinks about when these crimes happen that there are individuals who are right there to hopefully help those families walk through that process.
Absolutely. I saw part of the Deputy on Duty segment and looking at our victim advocate talk about their being there and the trauma that the family goes through. Obviously the victim goes through it, but everybody involved goes through that same trauma. And then we wonder why we have the mental health issues taking place in our community on top of COVID and everything else that's going on. So it's really important that we all engage in trying to make sure that we're all involved in trying to solve these issues in our community. And I'm hopeful again that this report is read widely throughout Leon County and that we still have, I'm really proud of our staff. Sara did a great job, but our victim advocates do a great job as well each and every day, trying to take care of the victims and protect citizens of Leon County.
Everybody all in. All in indeed. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Leon County Today. We'll see you back here next week.